The hidden secret that food companies don't want you to know. Hi everybody, this is Mike Erlob and you're on another episode of Power Your Life by Flex PT. I want to tell you a little story. Back when I was 10 years old, my parents got divorced and I lived with my dad. And back at that time, my dad being a single parent and teacher and just busy all the time, dinner and meals consisted of hamburger helper, cereal, and frozen pizzas. Those were just the norms back then. And, all of my friends, they kind of ate the same way. Back in the late 70s, 80s, it's just kind of, convenience food. That's just kind of what we did. He had a lot of, TV dinners and, budget gourmets and, those kinds of things. And, when I got to college, it was really more the same, except in those days, you didn't really have a lot of money. So, being a poor college student, it was all about Hot Pockets and ramen noodles. If you were lucky, you got a nice little Tortino's party pizza that you could roll up and eat. But, that really became just the way things were. That's just the way everybody ate. And when I started my weight loss program, I really did not know how I should structure my eating plan. My eating plan had always included a lot of bread and carbs. And that was just really, that's what we all did. And I think, I'm not the only one. I think a lot of people are that way. And I think a lot of people still are that way. And that is, to be honest with you, that was one of the problems, is I had become so dependent on sugar and wheat. And, that was not by accident. I do believe that is one of the problems that we currently have in our food industry. And I had no idea how that was affecting me. So, when I got out of college and then I started getting into the powerlifting world, and I loved that sport because it was all about how much weight can I lift. And I learned very quickly that, hey, you know what? When I hit that plateau and my workouts haven't been progressing, guess what? If I pack on a few, 3, 4, 5 pounds, I get a little stronger. And that's what I did. I would eat a lunch that consisted of 3 sandwiches, or I would go to McDonald's and get 3 double cheeseburgers. When you think about it, that's a lot of bread. And at the time, everyone in society, this is what we were being told by our government. This is what we were being told by the food industry, that, the problem isn't your bread and carbs, that the real problem was fat content. And now I know just how wrong that was. You see, if you've been following the nutritional guidelines for the last couple of decades, you may have be surprised by this, but we've been told again and again that in order to lose weight and stay healthy, we just have to reduce fat in our diet. So as a result of this advice, companies started to create all sorts of low-fat foods. But the problem is, when you take the fat out of a lot of food, it doesn't really taste that good at all. And, fat is what gives everything that flavor. When you think about it, my favorite cut of steak is a ribeye. I love a good marbled ribeye. And the reason I like that is because, that marbled fat really is what gives it the taste, and it just tastes great. So when you take fat out of a lot of the foods, to make up for that, what the food companies did is they added sugar. They added lots and lots of sugar, and they added along with that with the wheat as well. But they've hidden the sugar. They've created different names for it. If you look at if you go and look at the ingredients list, you look at the food labels, you're going to see a lot of chemicals in there that you have absolutely no idea what they are. Now, I'm going to ask you, why on earth do they need to put all of that in there? Okay, so since we've been told to always eat plenty of whole grains, we have been having cereals and breads several times per day. And when you add the people, all of our love of pasta and pizza and those kinds of things, really it's no wonder that a big part of our diet is made up of sugar and wheat. So you're going to ask the question, what does all of this have to do with gaining weight? Well, that's where a little hormone comes in that you may have heard about, and that hormone is insulin. So what insulin does is it will take sugar, including the carbs that are broken down into the sugar molecules during digestion. It'll take them out of the bloodstream. So then what is needed to is used to run the body, and then some is stored as glycogen, which is the glucose or the sugar that gets stored for short term in the muscle. And then the rest, and this is where things really get important, is then turned into body fat. So whatever it doesn't use for energy, it can't store as glycogen, boom, it gets stored directly as body fat. So I want you to think of insulin, this is really important now, I want you to think of insulin as the on and off switch when it comes to body fat. If insulin is in your bloodstream, you can store more body fat, but only when insulin is depleted can you start to burn fat and lose weight. Now this is a very important key concept to remember because this is what will affect your ability to lose weight. So that's why intermittent fasting works so well to burn fat and drop those extra pounds. Now, during the hours that you have spent fasting, your insulin drops until you get to a level low enough for you to allow yourself to burn fat for energy. And that will continue until you eat your next meal. And then insulin goes back up and you go back to burning sugar for energy. And this is also why low carb diets work so well too. You know, the same principle applies. So if on the other hand, much of your diet is made from sugar and wheat, you will end up accumulating more body fat instead of burning it. And the end result is you're going to gain weight. So what's the solution? Well, the first thing is obvious, right? You've got to cut sugar and wheat from your diet. You just got to do it. You know, and then you've got to start making some delicious fat-burning recipes like the ones found in our new 4-week weight loss system for busy moms and dads. So let's dig a little deeper into what happens when it comes to accumulating and burning body fat and what insulin has to do with it. You see, once you understand this process and how it works, you can start to adjust your diet and how frequently you eat to give you plenty of fat burning time. And I promise you, it doesn't have anything to do with going on long runs or spending hours in the gym each day. When we eat, our body will break down the food and convert it into glucose. I already mentioned that. That is the sugar in the blood. So then that sugar will start to accumulate, or the glucose will accumulate in our bloodstream. Now, if that's left unchecked and those levels continue to rise, that could really cause some serious damage over time. So this is why we have this built-in mechanism that pulls excess sugar from the blood. And the hormone in charge of that, as I mentioned earlier, through that process is insulin. So insulin has that ability to pull the sugar from the blood by unlocking the cell. Think of it like the key. It unlocks the cell in order to allow that glucose to enter the cell to be able to be used as energy. Now, if it doesn't going to be used as energy because you have enough of it, then what it'll do is it will store that glucose for the short term in muscles or the liver in the form of glycogen. Or, now this is the bad part, it will turn it into body fat for long-term storage. So the problem is that while you have insulin in your bloodstream, you can't pull fat out of the adipose tissue. And adipose tissue is your fat tissue. You can't pull fat out of that tissue to burn for energy. So for that to happen, you have to first deplete your insulin in your system by keeping your blood sugar low. Once the insulin in your body has been produced to the high levels of blood sugar, and once that's depleted, your body can start to access the stored sugar, and it will start with some of the short-term storage in the glycogen. Once that's depleted, it can start using the energy stored in our fat cells. So really, it's no wonder that it's so hard to lose weight. You know, this complicated process with insulin and your blood sugars and everything going on. So that's why, and this is again another very key important concept I want you to remember, that's why it's almost impossible to burn body fat by eating 6 or 7 small meals a day, or even snacking as you go along. You see, if you're doing that, it doesn't even matter how healthy those snacks are, because any food, anytime you eat, it will cause your insulin levels to go up. And with that, any fat burning comes to a screeching halt, no matter how hard you hit the gym or how far you run. That's why I've always said you cannot exercise your way out of a bad diet. You know, losing weight is, yes, it is about physical activity, it is about getting stronger, it is about working out, but that diet is key. If you don't have that piece, going for you, you're not going to be successful. So what's the solution? So the key to manageable weight loss is intermittent fasting. As long as you're making sure that when you do eat, the foods you're preparing have a minimal impact on your blood sugar. So basically, you just skip eating, skip food for long stretches of the day, including the 8 hours you spend sleeping, maximizing the time that your body is forced to burn fat for energy. Then you follow that up with healthy meals that'll keep you feeling great and, more importantly, keep your metabolism running high. And the best way to do that is to minimize the impact of insulin when you do eat. The key is to cut as much sugar and processed carbohydrates, particularly wheat, from your diet as possible. You see, sugar and wheat are the biggest offenders when it comes to raising your insulin levels through the roof. And that is why those food companies don't want you to know that. They just want you being dependent on that sugar and wheat because you're going to start craving more and more of it. And of course, it turns into more profits for them. So really, when you think about it, it makes sense because when you start to eat a bunch of cookies, cake, bread, pasta, pizza, you start putting on weight in record time. But cutting those foods from your diet as much as possible will do the reverse. And it gives you a much better shot at burning off all that extra body fat. So I want to give you some quick tips to get you started. These are fast and easy ways to cut as much of the sugar and wheat that you're consuming right now from your diet. So the first thing you need to look at is cut out soda and fruit juices, okay? Stop drinking a bunch of sugar and empty calories by cutting out the soda and fruit juices. And don't think that diet soda is an easy fix. The studies have shown that the sweet taste of an artificial sweetener can actually make you even hungrier. So save those sweeteners for other occasions. Instead, stick to water, black coffee, teas, sparkling water, and the likes. Drinking soda is nothing more than a bad habit. And it may seem hard at first, but after a few weeks, I guarantee you'll hardly miss it. Next, skip those fancy coffee drinks and creamers. They are more often filled with more sugar than even your soda. Stick to plain coffee and add some cream to it if needed. Or switch to black tea. It comes in all sorts of different strengths and flavors. And speaking of flavors, there's a lot of flavored coffees on the market as well that taste amazing black or with a little splash of cream. Just make sure you're very careful with those flavored coffees because some of them do have a lot of hidden sugars. So you really need to read what's on that ingredient list. Healthy wheat and sugar-free breakfast options. So if you're intermittent fasting, you're probably not even going to be eating breakfast, depending on the time frames. But sometimes, we just miss eating a good breakfast. And there's nothing wrong with eating breakfast food at lunch when you're ready to break your fast. So I want to give you some good options. Somehow, we have gotten accustomed to eating nothing but sugar and wheat for breakfast. There's cereal, there's pancakes, there's donuts, there's waffles, and the likes. Okay, somehow we got stuck with that. Instead, stick to lower carb options like good old-fashioned bacon and eggs. Or how about a fruit and veggie smoothie to end your fast? Find a few sugar and wheat-free breakfast options that you like and stick with those. And of course, like I said, if you're intermittently fasting, you can just, skip breakfast altogether. But, maybe have those things at lunch. So since we're talking about that, let's talk about lunch. You see, lunch isn't just about sandwiches. All of us want to eat healthy, and a lot of times we pack a lunch, or we fix it while we're at home. And that usually means for most of us, if you're packing your lunch or taking it to work, you're going to be having a sandwich or a side of chips or pretzels. In other words, you're eating plenty of wheat for lunch. So thankfully, there are a lot of other delicious and portable options. Fix a big salad instead. Add toppings like grilled chicken, last night's leftover steak, or chopped egg and cheese. Unwich are another great option. Grab some big lettuce leaves and make a sandwich without the bread. Next thing, don't snack. Stop snacking, okay? That is very, very important, all right? Instead, get in the habit of only eating 2 meals a day. You know what? I'm going to admit, it is going to take you a little bit of time to untrain yourself from thinking that you need food every 2 to 3 hours, but it will be well worth it when you remember that your insulin levels are going to be dropping and you're going to be forcing your body to burn fat instead. So the take home I want you to have from this is I want you to remember that, the key to true and lasting weight loss is to keep your insulin levels in check. And intermittent fasting, along with cutting out sugar and wheat, is the way to accomplish that. So I want to remind you that everybody, we're going to be live next Tuesday at 1 p.m. Until then, I want you all to stay healthy and keep moving forward.